I just watched the most riveting, dramatic testimony that I've seen in my life. Arguably, real life or on TV. And I feel awful that none of you will ever be able to see it. This was compelling, it was dramatic, it was emotional, it was so credible. And yet, well, let me set the scene for you, okay? This morning, the prosecution introduced the jury to Carolyn. That's her real first name. She describes the most awful circumstances of life that anyone can possibly imagine, even before she met Epstein. She has a mother who's an alcoholic and using drugs. She was abused by her grandfather from the time she's 4 years old, in the most awful way that a woman can possibly be abused. And then she's introduced as a teenager, a young teenager, barely past 12, to Jeffrey Epstein, through Virginia Roberts. And how she suffered through this abuse for years as a minor until she was tossed aside at the age of 18 because she was too old for his tastes. She describes how she would use the money that she got from Epstein to buy more drugs. And the story, look, I'll detail it tonight in my breakdown, my detailed breakdown on my live stream at 10 p.m. But her direct testimony was only an hour long, and yet she was on cross-examination for 4.5 hours by Mr. Paliuka for the defense. And he kept bringing up all these different things to refute her testimony. She filed a lawsuit in 2008 and 2009, 2 different lawsuits against Jeffrey Epstein and his then assistant Sarah Kellett, and did not name Ghislane Maxwell. None of those papers were naming Ghislane Maxwell. She also she received as a result of that something like $450,000. And then when the Epstein Victim Fund was opened up in 2019, she applied again there, and she was awarded something on the order of an additional $2.8 million. And what he's doing is he's bringing up all these different factors and contradictions where she omitted talking about Maxwell and the first actions that she brought 12, 13 years ago, that she never points the finger at Maxwell, that there's inconsistent statements that she makes to the FBI as to the level of abuse that she sustained, whether there was, actual completion of events or whether she was just being fondled. There was just all these different contradictions, and every time she's like, she seems confused and she doesn't understand. Like, she's literally confused. I think that she seems to be of, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, she seems to be of limited intellect, and she's confused by what's going on as he's asking her questions like, why is it that you didn't bring up Ghislane in 2008? So she would give an answer which made sense, an answer like, that was a different case. That was a different case. And when he kept methodically going statement by statement through dozens and dozens of different statements that would show contradictions to the direct testimony that she provided today in court. And the whole time she's like, I don't understand why you're asking me this. That has nothing to do with this case. And she's not understanding how obviously what he's getting at is the contradictions in her story. She just doesn't understand it. And she's getting more and more agitated and upset. And certain times, he would ask her a question and she would start barking about how her life has been ruined because of Ghislane Maxwell. And you could see the frustration and the lack of understanding as to what's happening in this trial. And that she's so hurt and angry and frustrated and lost, like literally lost. And, and he's basically accusing her of either not remembering or lying or constantly changing her story depending on the circumstances. And he was making some serious headway. As far as look, in statements she made to the FBI where she describes penetration, which is what she said did not happen. And she even says, that never happened. And he's like, well, here's your statement, which you said it did happen. Here's your sworn affidavit. Here's your interrogatories. Constantly contradicting one thing after another. And she's getting angry, and she's like, I don't understand. Why is this, what does this have to do with anything? She's so lost, and she's so confused. And then, after 4.5 hours of this, where her credibility is really shot pretty badly, just been pounded to a pulp, Maureen Comey, who handled direct, gets up on redirect, and she starts firing off rapid fire questions at Carolyn. And she just jumps in there and and raising the different elements that have been raised, the different forms of documents that have been thrown against her. And she said to her, did you write the complaint that was filed in 2008? And she screams, no. And she said, did you write the complaint that was filed for the Epstein Victim Fund? She screams out, no. And she says, did you review the FBI statements at any time prior to today? And she screams out, no. And she starts crying. It's like she's crying and she's screaming out, no. It was gut-wrenching. And she's like, did Epstein touch you when you were 15 years old? And she screams out, yes. And she's like, what year was that? And she's like, I don't know. She said, did she touch you when you were 14? And she's like, yes. And she screams, what year was that? And she's like, I don't know. And she screams, did Epstein touch you when you were 13 years old? And she's like, yes. And she's like, and Maureen asks, what year was that? And she's like, I don't know. And I mean, it was just, and then she's like, why are you here today? And she starts erupting in tears about how, this woman ruined her life, destroyed her life, and that she can never get any sort of money. There's no way to fix this, and this is awful, and this is terrible, and there's nothing that can, and all of a sudden we hear objection from the defense, and she gets stopped by the judge, who says, I'm sorry, I have to take this objection. And he says, look, this is narrative. She can't go on like this. And the judge says, I'll allow that answer to stand, but go on to the next question. And finally, she asks, do you have anything to gain from the outcome of this case? And she just cries out, no. And that was, that was the end of it. It was just really powerful. It was crazy, riveting drama, just watching her just come alive with emotion. And I have to say, a lot of people have issues with Comey. That was just brilliant lawyering. She was almost becoming the accuser in her tone and barking these questions at Carolyn and forcing those tears out of her in a way that you can't fake it. Nobody could fake that. No actress could possibly fake that. And I really feel that in under 3 minutes, Maureen Comey just completely undid 4.5 hours of a pounding and beating that was being thrust upon her testimony by the defense. It was absolutely riveting. I cannot overstate this enough. It was absolutely riveting just watching how in fewer than a dozen questions, Maureen, and less than 4 minutes, Maureen Comey took 4 hours of cross-examination and just ripped it up. There is no way anyone could hear that, to my mind. Just obviously, this is my personal opinion. There's no way anyone could hear that and not just say, wow, that woman genuinely suffered. And I don't know if her story is accurate. I don't know if she remembers everything exactly accurately, but she genuinely suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Whether or not that gets sufficiently tied to Ghislane Maxwell, because at the end of the day, this is a trial of Ghislane Maxwell, not Jeffrey Epstein. Whether or not the ties that she brought in, and she did bring in several times under several different forms of ties, that may be enough to tie in Ghislane Maxwell. Whether the jury will find that her testimony both credible and a basis to convict Ghislane Maxwell, that's yet to be seen. But what I just witnessed now, unforgettable. Absolutely unforgettable. I'm going to give a full update of everything I watched today at 10 p.m. on my live stream. I urge you to join me there. I'm going to have a lot more details about this. I gave my lunchtime report on Emily Baker's channel. Urge you to check that out. I'm going to be bringing that over onto my channel, and just that section where I updated from earlier today, that's going to be clipped and uploaded here as well. Anyway, look forward to catching you guys soon. Godspeed.